could go wrong. Everything surely does. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here among you. I'm Konstantinos. I will be moderating that panel. We accommodate Mrs. Dr. Smith, Dr. Sotirakopoulos. Nikos earlier gave us their short bio. And let's get on to the subject. We will begin with Dr. Sotirakopoulos.
Thank you.
We have approximately 10 minutes.
Even less.
And okay then, I will be waiting to you if you pass the time limit.
So, first of all, thank you very much for being here. So, in Atlas Shrugged, which is the most famous novel of Ayn Rand, the heroes understand that for the rational human being, all our actions in life are basically an answer to a why and a what for. Which means that for the things we do, there must be a reason and also there must be a purpose. And the same applies to our relationship with our various forms of authority. So what I'm going to do today is I'll try to examine two different forms of authority, and I will try to answer the questions, why do I submit to that authority, and also what is the purpose for doing so. So one kind of authority is authority that I voluntarily submit myself to. For example, I recognize that a scholar like Dr. Tara Smith has a deeper knowledge and a better understanding of what does it mean to have a rational legal theory. Now, listening to what she has to say, and in a way acknowledging her authority on the topic, is very beneficial for me. And why is this? Because by recognizing her authority, I do not surrender my rational faculty, I do not surrender the independence of my mind, and what I'm actually doing is I voluntarily understand that she has something to say. Now, if I learn something new that I did not know, then this is good for me. I benefit from it. Or if I spot a gap, if I spot a contradiction in her thought, then we can discuss it, and whoever is wrong benefits from this relationship. Okay? So basically, what is this? This is a win-win relationship. So what is the reason that I respect an intellectual authority? The reason I respect an intellectual authority is because, again, my independent judgment is telling me that Tara knows more on the subject than I know, therefore I need to listen to her. And what is the purpose for doing so? Why do I respect her? The purpose for doing so is because my life will become better from doing so. Now compare this voluntary, non-coerced form of respecting an authority to the reasons that, for example, I respect the Greek state. Now, in times, I respect it because, by coincidence, it does the right thing. For example, it tells me, do not shoot your neighbor, or make sure that you stop on the red traffic light. In short, when it's about protecting the individual rights. But most of the times, I obey the authority of the state at the point of a gun, or so as not to find myself in prison. For example, my judgment tells me that the money that I've worked so hard to earn needs to stay with me. Or it's my family, or my friends, or people that I choose that need to benefit from the money that I've earned. Now, what does the government say? The government says, no, give us the money, and we know better what to do with them. Now, if I politely decline this quote offer, then coercion comes into place. What is coercion? Coercion is the threat that if I don't obey to that authority, then force will be inflicted on me. So they're forcing me to do something, they are forcing me to surrender my independent judgment, and they're basically forcing me to surrender my thoughts. Why am I obeying them? So as not to get shot, or so as not to find myself in prison. And what for? What is the purpose for me obeying the state? Well, I don't really know. For whatever reason they come up with, based on a moral code that I do not accept, and based on a moral code that says that I should be sacrificed for somewhere else, without having first accepted my concern, or even asking for my consent. Now compare these two forms of authority. In the one case, in my relationship, for example, with an intellectual, or when I buy Tara's book, two rational individuals enter into a relationship that is voluntary and both benefit from it. Now, when I pay my property tax, for example, I do not benefit from it. Or if the state thinks I'm benefiting from it, I haven't been sold to that. I haven't understood that. So the difference is so abysmal that maybe we shouldn't even use the same word, the term authority, for both of these very, very kind of moral and philosophical different situations. And now we reach the most important problem in today's society and in today's accepted philosophy. How we use the lack of consistency in the moral code we use in our private life and in the moral code we use in politics. Let me give you an example. Think about our sexual relationships, okay? Like in the bedroom, we understand that the lack of consent and coercion is something that is very, very bad. If we say to someone, do you want us to do this? And they say no, that's it. Immediately we understand that that's the end of it. We should not force someone to do something that they don't want to, and we respect it. And this is very good. But if coercion and if the lack of consent is wrong in the bedroom, no matter how much someone needs love or sex or affection, that's not a good argument. You cannot say, I really need to sleep with you, so you have to sleep with me. Since we understand this, why is it that suddenly in politics, coercion and lack of consent are completely okay? How is it possible, for example, that the state can conscript me to go to the army? Or how is it possible that the state, without my consent, can take away 60% of my income, or even 1% of my income? By which moral standard then something which is wrong for the individuals, coercion or the threat of force, is suddenly okay for a bigger group? But people will say, oh, but this is not the same. The one situation, the bedroom, is not the same with the situation in politics. But why is this the case? After all, as human beings, we have a very specific way in which we operate. In order to live and survive, we need to think, and in order to think rationally and independently, we need to be free. Free from what? Free from coercion. So in this case, it's not that when I'm in the bedroom, I operate in a specific way, in which case I should be free of coercion, but suddenly, 10 meters down the road, where I'm in the market or when I'm in the public sphere, I can afford to operate under the threat of violence or under the threat of a gun. As Aristotle put it, A is A. It cannot be that in the bedroom A is A, but then suddenly in politics A is not anymore A. So my message to you would be, keep your intellectual antennas really alert and really high for people who preach or who act under two different moral codes, and for people with contradictory moral codes. For people who in one field of life, they are supposedly crusaders for your rights, for example, your right not to be harassed, but in a different sphere, in the sphere of politics, suddenly they do not respect your rights anymore. Because my final message is that politics is not a distinct universe with its own ethical rules. It's not like in politics there's kind of a moral vacuum that anything goes. And if someone says that this is so, they want something from you. And what they want from you is not good for you. So stay alert. Thank you.
That was quite some interesting thoughts from Dr. Sotirakopoulos. We will be going to Dr. Smith now.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to begin just by thanking, first of all, the organizers, Nikos primarily, but George, Anna, everybody involved, behind the scenes, on the scenes. Thank you all so much for coming. It is really heartening to be here in this beautiful city that I've never been to before, and to see all of you interested in these ideas. Can I ask a quick question? How many of you have ever read any Ayn Rand before? Okay. So the others, you're just here because you're curious, you've heard of her. Yeah, no, just, okay. Okay. So I'm actually going to echo, I think, and just elaborate in some different directions on some of what our first speaker was saying. And I'm going to organize my remarks around three things. I'm going to just talk about the framework of authority for a long time. That'll be probably the most that I'll have to say. I just want to get us thinking about that concept of authority, the authority relationship. I'll then say a little bit about Ayn Rand's conviction that really stands as a premise underneath her understanding of authority, including political authority. And then finally, I will say a little bit about freedom, one of the other issues that's addressed in the general description of this panel, okay? And I'll try to speak in plain English, and God bless you for understanding in plain Greek. God bless you. So authority. Authority raises the question, in any sphere, it raises the question of who's in charge? Who gets to rule whom, right? Who gets to boss the others around, if you have that expression or something like it, right? I don't know who's the boss. Now, authority is a relationship of control, of rightful control. When you have authority, you have title to restrict another person's actions in certain ways. And as Nikos was saying, in certain circumstances, this is fine. This makes perfect sense. He gave the nice, flattering example of an authority. He was trying to butter me up. I don't know if you have that expression. I guess you do. But just a few other quick examples. In certain military relationships, we want, between the troops and the captains and the lieutenants and the whatever, the colonels, in the Greek military, the American military, you want clear lines of authority. Who's going to make some final decisions about what will happen? On a medical team, a team of doctors and nurses, others in the emergency room, or on a surgical team, you want some clear lines of authority, okay? There are others, you want the babysitter. You want the children to understand the babysitter is in charge, etc., right? So there are many circumstances in which an authority relationship can make sense. But what's crucial is that the basis of any authority relationship be justified. Okay? So authority per se, neither right nor wrong, right? But you need to investigate what's the basis of this particular relationship between these people and the one having authority over the other. And that raises a prior question. Why should anyone be in the position to rule another person, to have that kind of authority, control, or title over another person? And just quickly, I'll give you an answer to that. Basically, one should have authority over others when that relationship serves the interest of the person over whom authority is exerted, okay? I may be under someone else's authority, but that makes sense when it's to my benefit, when it's in my interest, okay? Now, step back a minute. I want us to notice the completely social perspective of starting the inquiry about the place of the individual in society with this concept of authority, right? Treating that as our entry point. It suggests a fundamentally social conception of human existence, as if this is the main problem we've got to solve, the problem of you and other people, or even more specifically, who will rule whom. Now, while we do face certain choices about how to deal with other people, these aren't the primary challenge that human beings need to worry about. Reality is. Okay, here again, Nikos was saying A is A. There are facts of reality that have authority, so to speak, over all of us, right? So prior to worrying about other people, independent of that, there's the question, what must human beings do simply to exist, whether or not there are other people around? What are the conditions that he must satisfy? And news bulletin just in, pleasing other people isn't one of them. It isn't one of the fundamental conditions of human existence. Getting in with the right people, arranging yourself to fit them, to stand in a certain relationship to others, that is not a fundamental requirement of human life or human flourishing. I think it's significant that Ayn Rand, in elaborating on her philosophy of objectivism, I think it's significant that when she did this, when she examined the foundations of a viable social system, so even when she was talking about a social system, she doesn't begin by looking at a man's social position. Rather, she investigates his nature as a human being, independent of any social arrangements in place around him or what status he might have in given society. His nature is something that he'll take with him, so to speak, wherever he goes, right? Regardless of whether there are other people around. So when she then elaborates more directly on proper social relationships, what Rand finds is that there is no natural authority of any human being over another. Right? Apart from maybe parents over children for a certain number of years, but let's just leave that aside for now. Okay? Apart from that, there's no natural authority that anybody has over me or you to boss you around. Right? Again, we are all subject to the laws of nature and to the authority of reality. If I drop a glass on the floor on a hard surface, it's going to shatter. Actually, I did that in Radio Now's station just yesterday. I clumsily knocked it over. You know, if I don't get enough proteins and vitamins, I'm going to get sick. I'm not going to be too well. If for a long, extended time I don't get enough certain things, I'm going to get very sick and worse, right? This isn't a matter of choice. This isn't a matter of social convention. It's not a conclusion of political philosophy. It's a fact. It's a metaphysical fact. It's a given. Like it or not, we're all subject to the law of identity, the facts of our needs. But this, I mean, at this point you might be thinking, lovely, lovely, what does this have to do with politics and authority? Well, this actually helps us recognize what we need from a legal system. Why we should adopt rules and rulers, right? If we're going to have rules, like laws, that means we're going to have rulers, people who are in charge in a certain very real way, right? Authorities. Human beings need to identify those conditions that are necessary for our existence, for our survival, for our flourishing. And we need to figure out whether it makes sense for us to interact with other people. Quick answer here, yes it does, right? But also, in what ways it makes sense for us to interact with other people. And further, what preconditions are required for us all to be able to reap the advantages of society, of living and interacting with one another. And then on the basis of those answers, we need to erect a legal system. So, the law properly, I think, and we may disagree on this somewhat, I'm not sure from what you've said, okay? The law properly set up, does have authority. A proper government is entitled to boss me around in certain ways. Okay, that's a crucial condition, crucial qualification here. In which ways? Those that are necessary to maintain the conditions under which we can reap the advantages of interacting with one another. That is, so as to protect our freedom of action, so that we are able to meet our needs and thrive and flourish. Beginning our inquiry into the individual's place in society by asking about authority, I realized after a few days of thinking about this, back a few weeks ago, I realized after a while that I was a little troubled by that, because that is, again, starting with this question of authority, it suggests a relationship of dependency, right? Or of inferiority even, right? Between the persons with authority and others. It doesn't strictly entail that, but it definitely carries the whiff of subordination. Properly, however, a society, a culture, all of its institutions, government, churches, social organizations, moral or political movements of other sorts, right? Properly, all of these must treat human beings as adults, responsible for making their way in the world and entitled to make their own way, to chart and follow their own course. Excuse me a second. Now, I was told I could have about 15 minutes. Have I gone to 15 minutes already?
Not yet.
It's not very late here.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. At any rate, so what was I saying? Sorry. So basically, authority should be rooted in the proper relationship between the individual. Sorry, let me say that again. The proper relationship. Now I'm using the same word. The proper relationship between the individual and any authority must stem from egoism and individualism, from the recognition that your life is yours. So now my second point, which is much more brief. Underneath Ayn Rand's view of legal and social relationships stands her ethics, okay, as others have mentioned. George even was mentioning this. George gave a great setup, I think, to this session, as well as Nikos, okay? So beneath Rand's view of legal or social relationships stands her ethics, which revolves around the conviction that your life is yours. You are not a character in someone else's story. You are not a plot device in film that someone is shooting, right? Conveniently on hand, simply to suit his purposes. There is absolutely no reason to think of human beings in that way, as naturally under the authority of someone else. Right? The reality is, you're born. Right? You have a birthday. Everybody here has a birthday, whatever it was. Let's say June 7th, 1995, right? You're born, you have a life. It's yours. To make of what you choose, as best you can, right? It will end. You will die. But until then, you're the boss. Each man is an end in himself. Each baby born in this city, in Thessalonica today, right, does not come into the world with chains or chains around its neck or under a mortgage or under a debt to anybody else. These children, they don't owe anything to anybody, right? It's not that, okay, we'll give you a day. We'll give you a day pass. Well, 2 or 3 months, your life is yours, but then, when you grow up, okay, now you're 2.5. No, your life is yours the whole way through. Morally, we are equals in this respect. So my third topic. What does all of this mean for freedom and the law? For state power, state authority? If there's no natural authority, as I said a few minutes ago, does that mean that we should be free? Yes. But it's crucial to understand what freedom means. And here again, I simply echo and build on some of what a couple of previous speakers have already said, right? First, I'm talking about political freedom or legal freedom, not the metaphysics of free will. I'm actually taking free will for granted. But by this legal or political freedom, I mean, as previous speakers also did, freedom from coercion, freedom from force. More exactly, the absence of others' initiation of physical force, directly imposing it on me or threatening it by grabbing or groping or gagging or beating or confining or knifing or what have you. Why do we need freedom from that? Because that is the unique means by which people can thwart another person's ability to act as